Good morning. This is Matt Mayberry. I'm the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Home Builders Association. And this is our very first podcast. And my very first guest on our very first podcast is my friend Eddie Olson. He is the sales manager for Bell-Tate's Hardware and Building Supply. We're going to learn all about wood. We're going to learn about supplies. We're going to dispel some of those myths that are out there. And for the next 15 minutes, you're going to learn something new. So Eddie Olson from Bell-Tate's, thank you so much for being my first guest on my first podcast.
Matt, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. What the heck does Bell-Tate's do?
Well, we're a family-owned lumber and building materials supply company, headquartered out of Jaffrey, New Hampshire. 2023 will be our 125th year in continuous operation. We operate 8 full-service lumber yards in New Hampshire and 1 in Massachusetts. And within those 9 locations, we have 5 full-service kitchen and bath showrooms.
Oh, wow. So I got to ask because me, like a lot of folks, got addicted to HGTV during the COVID. And so I watched way too much of it. Colored cabinets, good, bad, indifferent, trend, here to stay. What do you think?
Well, I didn't want to come off sounding half-cocked, so I did some research this morning with some of my senior designers, and they're still seeing a lot of white and gray shaker-style cabinets. But it sounds funny, but what they say is a trend is warm white as opposed to stark white. In addition to that, wood stain styles seem to be coming back. So that's interesting, wood stained as opposed to painted.
Yeah, and Bell-Tate's is one of the premier building supply companies in the state of New Hampshire, and you're also a member of the Home Builders Association, and you're also our treasurer. So thank you. Is a lot of the stuff new construction? Are you dealing with like big contractors coming in buying 100 cabinets, or are you dealing with mom and pops who are buying one kitchen set or some lumber?
We have a pretty diverse clientele in our kitchen and bath. We do a lot of remodels where the person purchasing the kitchen cabinets or vanities or countertops is the actual homeowner. They have their own contractor. They make their selections and purchases. But we also have a really nice group of customers, professional customers, that will send their new construction customers into one of our stores to make their selections. So we're very lucky with our customer base.
Now, for a lot of folks who may be hearing this for one of the first times and they're driving around in their car, they drive by Bell-Tate's and they see lots and lots of lumber. I know that's part of it, but what else do you do? Because when I've walked in, I looked around and it was like, wow, y'all have a lot. It's very diversified.
It certainly is. We're all of our lumber yards have adjacent hardware stores with them, so you can buy paint and power tools and grass seed. We like to think we're a pretty conclusive, a pretty collective offering. All the locations deliver to a certain extent, but we really are like a small, locally oriented Home Depot.
You're like, we all talk about the good old days. You're that neighborhood local hardware store. You're just big.
Excuse me. We like to think that our knowledge and our service separates us from the big box. We have people that have been working on our lumber counters and mixing paint for over 35 years, and that type of institutional knowledge can't be replaced. So we like to think the experience of going to one of our yards, whether it's Ashland, New Hampshire, or Pembroke, New Hampshire, or Moulton Borough, that you're going to get a really cool experience as opposed to waiting in line and trying to dodge forklifts.
Wow. I want to talk a little bit about, we're going to go deep in the weeds here because a lot of our listeners are also members of the Home Builders Association. Lumber. A board is not a board is not a board. There's different grades, there's different softness and hardness. You've been a big advocate, and Bell-Tate's has been on the forefront of this, of the Canadian-graded lumber that some architects are mandating be built in a home. How come a homeowner can't pick their own lumber? What's the difference between lumber from Milan, New Hampshire versus 2 miles away in Quebec? What's the difference?
What you're referring to, Matt, is all softwood framing lumber is designated SPF or SPFS. The SPF part stands for spruce, pine, fir. That all needs to come from north of the border. So SPF is a collection of 8 species of spruce, pine, or fir trees that are harvested north of the international border. SPFS, the S stands for south. That is a group of 10 species of trees that are harvested in south of the border. So one may ask, well, the Canadian border is not a straight line, and we have parts of Maine and New Hampshire that are further north in Canada. It's the inclusion of the 2 different species that is kind of the rub. There are structural differences in these 2, SPF and SPFS, but is it really that significant enough to cause an architect to specify one over the other? So that really is the thing we need to concentrate on. And are these architects specifying what they consider a stronger grade of lumber, SPF, just out of hand, or is there actual research and data requiring them to do that?
And what do you think, in your opinion?
Well, I think a lot of cases it's very easy to specify something where people consider it better. But as an example, we have a development right now going on in downtown Nashua that is a public housing development, and we bought in excess of $1.5 million worth of Canadian SPF lumber to go into that project. We could not use SPFS from our main supplier, which is Milan Lumber in Milan, New Hampshire.
Wow. And Milan, New Hampshire, for those of you not good with geography, is north of a lot of Canada.
Correct.
And so that means that the public, and in this case, public housing, costs more because you had to go, and you also had to pay the 9% tariff on that lumber coming across. You had to wait for it. So that project now, that could have come in under $1 million without that tariff.
As everyone knows, and we've all lived through the supply chain horrors of the last 30 months, if we get the lumber from northern Quebec, it's more fuel charge, harder to get truck drivers, harder to get across the border, the lead time's longer. Now, I want to be clear that if there is a structural reason to designate SPF over SPFS, totally understand. Nobody wants an unsafe building.
No one does.
And for sure, we would like to see architects specify the correct thing, but not specify things out of hand because they perceive some type of structural benefit.
Is this something we can fix in our state legislature? Because I know the governor has on his desk to sign an initiative to buy New Hampshire-made and American-made steel for all these projects. Can we do that same type of legislation in New Hampshire for wood, or does that have to be a federal issue?
Well, I believe that that it should be easy enough for us to at least have some type of legislation to verify that extra strength requirement or perceived strength requirement is required. The New Hampshire Retail Lumbermen's Association has a lumber lobbyist that is working that issue right now. Again, we want to make sure the buildings are safe, but we don't want to forego New Hampshire locally grown sustainable lumber when we don't have to.
But do those 2 species of trees really make that much of a difference?
Well, I'd like to think I'm an arborist sometimes. So I'm not really sure that the 3 different species is the Sitka spruce, the Norway spruce, and the red pine, and I'm just not at that level to be able to explain the 6 different strength characteristics of framing lumber.
Wow, that's crazy with them. We have lots of folks who are new to this, and they may be trying to build their own deck. They may be trying to change the roof on their house because they got some time, or put that addition on. What piece of advice would you give a homeowner who shows up at Beltates and says, "Hey, Eddie, I got a Monday off. I'm going to build a new deck." what advice would you give folks who want to tackle their own home projects themselves?
Well, most home projects don't fall into these categories because they're not large structures. They're not multi-floor. They don't require the type of structural integrity that a bigger building would have. I would suggest that homeowners go to, of course, I'd like them to go to a locally owned New Hampshire-based lumber company where they've got some institutional knowledge. But any place they go, they'll be able to buy the right thing, and that's the important thing. What we like to think, what Bell-Tates provides is a little bit more expertise. And if you want a stiffer deck, put your joist 12 inches apart, not 16. If you want a better, thicker roof, use 5/8 as opposed to 1/2 inch. And it's pretty simple.
And that's stuff you're not going to get on Google.
You may not get the right stuff on Google.
Exactly. I want to flip back. We're talking a little bit off air about the governor's housing initiative that's coming through, the $100 million in the Invest NH or the Invest 603 plan. Do you think that's a good thing for New Hampshire? Do you see a need for that? Is there an opportunity for local hardware stores to help get more affordable units and workforce housing into the market and online quicker?
Absolutely. I read through the legislation briefly, and it looks like about $60 million for multifamily housing. And even prior to the pandemic, Nashua was in an incredible housing deficit, and it hasn't got any better during the pandemic. People still want to move to New Hampshire. We're a very attractive state for all people to live and occupy. I think that our locally owned lumberyards are more nimble. We can bring in special materials and special order products much quicker and much faster. We can deliver to the job site faster. And we're professionals at helping builders manage their jobs. So builders build well, we supply well. I think that's a big key.
I see with the inflation coming through, I see we all know we have supply chain issues, but are you also seeing the prices jump up and down as the interest rates change?
I don't see the prices following the rate of inflation or the interest rates. What I see is it really is a educational exercise in supply and demand. Okay. If more plastic is required to build a house, I should say as more plastic is required to build a home, they have to produce more plastic. And if they can't produce more plastic, which is made out of petroleum, and we can't get it trucked to us, it really does fiddle with our ability to supply and ability to build.
As we begin to close out this segment of Building New Hampshire, the podcast, what's the one product that you have on there that you kind of scratch your head and it's like, why aren't more people buying this? This is great. Is it like a decking? Is it a siding? Is it a brick? Is it a walkway? Is it a window? Is it wood? What kind of, if more people knew about this, if they knew how great this product was, it could change things.
Well, we're always looking for sustainable products and products that don't hurt our environment. And, the more we move down that continuum, there are a lot of products out there that require a lot of energy to build. But, most people really like the look of wood siding. But they don't want to maintain it. They don't want to scrape it and paint it and do all that every 3 or 4 years. So right now we're really seeing a spike in, I'd call it artificial siding that looks like wood, whether it's James Hardie siding, which is fiber cement, or it's Everlast siding, which is a strong PVC siding. I think more people, if they understood more about it, they would dive headfirst into paying a little bit more money up front with a lot less maintenance money down the road.
That's what it takes. But that wraps up our time together. Friends, I want to thank you for listening. This is the very first podcast of our Building NH or Building New Hampshire podcast. And our guest was Eddie Olson, who's the sales manager for Bell-Tates. They're an amazing company. And if you see them, ask for Eddie. He'll wait on you himself, I promise. Eddie Olson, thank you so much for being our first guest.
Thank you, Matt. My pleasure.
And next up, we have Brad Bossy, who is an accomplished realtor, and we're going to hear all about the housing market. Eddie helped us build the houses. Now Brad's going to help us sell houses. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to Building New Hampshire, the podcast. We're on our second episode with this, and with a great friend of mine, Brad Bossy. He's making faces at me right now, so you can't. That's where the pause comes from, my language, so we kind of hate him for that. But I'm Matt Mayberry. I'm the executive director of the New Hampshire Home Builders Association, and Brad Bossy is a realtor with Mo Marketing Group. He is a highly accomplished sales agent with LaMontagne Home Builders right here in New Hampshire. He is crushing the real estate market. Truly, he is the real estate boss. And so we're going to talk a couple minutes about some of the myths, some of the facts, what's going on in the housing industry. And so, Brad Bossy, welcome to Building New Hampshire, the podcast.
Matt Mayberry, thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure.
I got to say, I'm a little slighted. I can't believe I wasn't the first, but no, I'm just kidding, obviously.
Exactly. You're my friend, so you get to wait.
Truly honored to be here. Learning microphones.
Exactly. So what you heard was he had to reposition the microphone a little bit. The fun part of live podcasting. But, Brad, we talked to Eddie Olson from Beltates about kitchen cabinets and, you know, colored cabinets and painted, whatever it is, that it was, he said it's white, warm white, and gray. You know, what are your customers looking for? Are they reacting to blues and greens and grays? And someone's looking at, like, I want to redo my kitchen. We've all watched way too much HGTV. They want to go, colored cabinets. What would you tell your clients?
So I got to say, Eddie's right about that. That seems to be the trend. Interiors of homes it's a trend. You know what I mean? You look back 20 years, everything's carpeted and funky colored carpets, and actually probably more than 20 years. But right now it's more neutral colors like that. But then we have, clients come in who want like brown and blue and mixed up together. So it really depends on the client, depends on the buyer. But I'd say a majority, we'll spec out some units and we'll do a lot of neutral colors just because down the road too, if they do want to paint, using a color like white, they have that. It's a lot easier to paint a white cabinet something different than a brown cabinet something different. So
absolutely that. A lot of folks are listening to us as they're driving around, and we hear about interest rates. We hear about the market crashing. We hear about, people are asking, are there still multiple bids? Are there still lines out the door? Because, Brad, we've talked about separately how at one point in time, I think you had like 27 offers on one home.
Yeah.
Is that still happening? Have the interest rates crushed the real estate market?
I think that it depends on the property for sure. Right now I'm not getting 27 offers on a resale home. I'm maybe getting 15, which is still a lot.
Wow.
So people are still out there buying. In regards to interest rates, I'm kind of seeing it from both sides. There's definitely people who, their buying power changed because the interest rates are rising. But then there's other people who were kind of dragging their feet and just like, I don't know what they're waiting for because we all knew that interest rates were going to be rising, but it's kind of forcing buyers to make a move and start actually buying.
Are you seeing prices go above list price still?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'd say a majority of properties are still getting bid. If you're listing a property right now, you're assuming, as a buyer agent, you're assuming you're going to have to put in over list price. And when I'm listing a property, I'm still, kind of using that pricing strategy of going a little lower, trying to get as many people in the door as possible to create that bidding atmosphere in order to bring the price up.
Wow. One of the shifts we've seen in recent years in the state of New Hampshire has been 55 plus. I'd like you to talk a little bit about the project that you're working on in Goffstown because it's a great project. Do you see that trend growing? Do you see it diminishing? Do you see it stabilizing? Talk a little bit about this development. I'll let you talk about it in Goffstown that I think is just great.
Yeah, they're gorgeous. They're absolutely gorgeous. It's a 55 plus. It's actually a 100% 55 plus. Most 55, not most, but there's a lot of 55 plus communities that are, one person in the household needs to be 55 plus, and then maybe another person has to be above 40. So that's kind of the thing. But this is 100%. It's right off of Glen Lake in Goffstown. Beautiful. We're going to have 41 units there. We have 13 under contract right now. There's 1-story units. There's 2-story units. A lot of them we've spec'd out to try to get the ball rolling on things because supply chain is such a problem right now. I'm sure Eddie, I don't know if you guys were talking about with Eddie, but things are tough to get right now. So in order to get building on things, we need to order ahead of time. But then we also allow the option for people to come in, pick their unit at Drywall, and basically pick out their cabinets, countertops, their flooring, and all that stuff. So it's, what they want.
Are appliances still 18 months out? I mean, is there still a big supply chain snag?
There is. It's crazy. We actually have a really good partnership with Whirlpool, and they can't get some of their own products. It's bizarre, but it's the way it is right now. We're kind of stuck in that, but we plan accordingly, knowing we get lead times, and we'll make sure the buyers know of these lead times so that their expectations are set correctly, and we can get the job done for them. We always try to under-promise, over-deliver, because that's the safe way to go about it. If we think a house is going to be done in, 6 months, we'll probably tell them it's going to be done in 8 months, just to give that, little bit of cushion room, knowing that things happen out of our control.
Well, that's why you're the real estate boss.
I'm the real estate boss,
You set expectations, but this development, what's the name of the development?
It's called Glen Place. It's right on 114 across from the Villa Augustina School. And LaMontagne Builders built all of it. Just a little history on LaMontagne Builders. We've been around since 1964. We're a subdivision builder. We have done some 55-plus communities in the past. It's not kind of our main thing, but what we do it the right way. And I think they came out beautiful.
Do they allow dogs? I love German Shepherds, so I happen to be over 55, barely, kind of, but do they allow dogs out there?
They do allow dogs.
Because it's also what, ladies
We
and
are
gentlemen,
pet friendly.
if you haven't been on any of the New Hampshire rail to trail system, I'm a big advocate of it. I've done hundreds upon hundreds of miles of this. It's flat, it goes forever, but literally outside your door at Glen Place, you can walk out and there's a trail. And you can get on that trail and you can just walk from there all the way to Newmarket.
I heard it goes all the way to Methuen too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't walked it myself, so I'm kind of going by word of mouth. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. There's people walking by all the time. It's great for 55 plus getting out there and getting a little exercise. And then Glen Lake's right there. It's in a great spot.
Now, Brad, what are you work with a lot of buyers and also a lot of sellers. What advice do you give buyers? Because we have a lot of folks out there now. We talked about these multiple offers and have to pay over, and they're just beaten. They're defeated. They're just like, why even bother? I'll move into my parents' house and wait for another 2 years, or I'll wait for the market to crash, and then I'll pick something up on the cheap. What are you telling buyers who are just sick of all this?
Telling them to just be diligent. Keep going. Honestly, you've come in this far. You're pot committed. The market, I don't think it's going to crash like 2008. The lack of inventory right now, it's going to sustain it. Prices might, shift a little bit. Interest rates are rising, but it's still kind of equal. I was talking to somebody the other day that they were like, when I bought my house, it was 16% interest rate. And I'm like, well, yeah, you bought it for, $75,000. It kind of is a totally different scenario there. I think it's the term I heard the other day was date the rate. You know what I mean? Buy the house, get it, your payment, refinance when things go down. That's the best way to go about doing it. If you want a house, go back in with your parents or whatever. But if you're, renting, stop throwing your money out the window.
Yeah, rents aren't going down.
They're not going
They're
down
going
either.
up.
The rents are going up as well. So that's the other thing, And I've had a lot of buyers come in. They're like, all right, my rent just increased to $2,600 a month. I'm done. I'm going to buy, even if, the interest rates are this and I have to pay over. They're sick of giving their money to somebody else and building their equity. They want to build equity for themselves. And real estate investment is the best investment you can make.
It really is, and you're competing in a bigger pool for renters and tenants versus purchasing. You might have 17 offers, but there's 37 people who called about that 2-bedroom apartment.
Yep.
What's the biggest mistake that when you walk into a seller's home for the first time, they say, yep, we're ready to go. What's the one thing, Brad, that makes you kind of cringe that you could tell everyone, like, before we get to your home to list it, do this? What would that be?
take down all your family photos.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, take down all your, anything religious. It's just people want to come into a house that's very neutral to them. You don't want to turn away buyers. You don't want to turn off buyers. Things like that. Honestly, I always say, let's get it as bare as possible because you want the rooms to look as big as possible. They want to be able to, picture where their furniture is going to fit over in that corner. They want to picture where their family photos are going to go. Just keep it as neutral and bare as possible so it looks as big as possible. Everybody's doing their first showings online these days.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing it. Zillow, whatever, they go online, they look at the listing. Those photos need to be perfect. That's the most important thing to get people in the door. Price is another thing, of course, to get in the door. But if you see those photos and they're perfect, it's going to entice people to get off their butt and show up. And that's half the battle these days,
And unfortunately, we also live in a society where everyone can look at your home. Everyone can zoom in on the pictures that are on your refrigerator, that are on your walls.
Yeah.
They can tell who lives there.
Clean. You just want it clean. You want it tidy. You want it just not messy.
Neutral.
Yeah, things off the countertops. Just make it nice. It doesn't need to be, because we're in a seller's market, it doesn't need to be all right, we have to, redo all this stuff. Their sellers are fortunate. They don't have to do that necessarily right now, but just clean it up. Just clean it up. Take things off the wall. Make it look as neutral as possible and as open as possible.
And I've been a realtor for 35 years because I'm old. But it's one where, in watching buyers, they know within the first 15 to 20 seconds of walking into a home whether they like this or not.
100%. You've said that to me many times, and you're so right. They know right off the bat.
Right off the bat. And so, because I've had those sellers who say but you didn't show them the property. You didn't say this is a tile floor. I like to think buyers are pretty educated and can tell the difference between carpet, tile, and wood. I think buyers are much more educated when they walk into a home of exactly what they want, exactly what they're looking for. And oftentimes, they may be coming into either, wrong word but the right sentiment, ratify their ideas. I like this home, or I don't like this home, and my spouse is making me see it. But what other advice? Pools. Everyone, pluses and minuses on pools. What would you tell your sellers about a pool?
Sellers, make sure it's in proper working order.
Yep.
Make sure that, a buyer's not going to want to come in and be I have to, put in a new lining on this pool right away. Pool maintenance is tough, so make sure the pool is ready to go.
Crystal clear.
Yeah.
And get all the junk out of it, all the floaties that your family loves, get it out there, pack some of the stuff away. That's why you have a garage bay, to pack all the stuff away.
Exactly. And I would say in regards to pools, if you're a seller, maybe put something a little educational material for a potential buyer to know, because some buyers will walk in, they've never done anything with a pool. They don't know pool maintenance. So they're walking in totally blind, I love the house, but I'm scared to take on this undertaking of a pool. So it might turn them off because they don't want to deal with that stress of having to worry about maintaining a pool. So maybe just, write down some tips and tricks of hey, it's very easy. You can do this. We just redid this.
That's a really good idea.
And it's simple. It's something simple just to show that, just to take that fear factor out. Because if you don't know anything about a pool and you walk into something with a pool, it's a shock for you.
Absolutely. Friends, we're talking to Brad Bossy. He's a local realtor here in New Hampshire with the Mo Marketing Group, and he's one of the sales agents for LaMontagne Home Builders. He is truly one of the best in New Hampshire. He's truly a star. He is the real estate boss. So in our final couple of minutes, what recommendation would you have? If someone's thinking about listing, should they list their property now? Should they wait? What should they do?
Oh my God, list your property now. First of all, call me. Yep. I'll take care of everything.
And how can they do that?
You can call me, 603-801-1838. Brad Bossy, the real estate boss. You can email me, brad@mohomes.com, moehomes.com. And I'll sit down with you. I'll come over. I'll do a CMA on your property, a comparative market analysis, to tell you what I think you can get for the house. And I'll tell you what I think you should list your price at for your house, because that's also a big part of it. You don't want to overlist, because days on market is a big thing right now. You don't want your property to look stale on the market, because the first thing a buyer is going to see if there's 10 plus days on the market is what's wrong with it, because that's how crazy it is. But in regards to time-wise, sell now. Your house is never going to be worth as much as it is in this moment right now, as I'm speaking, as it is right now.
Wow.
So, and it's gearing up to the end of the summer season. I mean, it's not, I'm jumping ahead, but if you want to close on a house, you're looking at a 30 to 45 day closing. If you're financing, cash can be faster, but schools start in September. People want to get their kids in that school system and things like that. So those are all things you need to think about. So sell now. If you're even thinking about the idea of it at all, have me over. I'll check it out. Let's talk. And I think if you want to do it, you got to do it now.
Absolutely. And friends, the reason why I had Brad Bosse come on with us is because he's also chairman of the 2023 New Hampshire State Home Show.
Very excited about
which
that.
Which is a big undertaking. It's 140 booths. Brad, why should residents or our friends who are listening to this, why should they go to a home show? They can look at the stuff online. Why should they go?
It's the experience. Honestly, it's a great time. People walk in the door, you're meeting people, you're shaking hands, you're making connections, you're asking questions that you can't necessarily get from online. You'll read something, but it's like, I read it on the internet. So much is untrue on the internet. You meet people, you have a question about roofing, you have a question about, heated floors, you have a question about anything like that in regards to a home. And there's a lot of non-home stuff there. There's a lot of food stuff. I love food, so I'm always excited about that. It's just a great time.
Yeah, it is. And it's also one where, we've seen people come in and they have their smartphone in their hand, and they can talk to a vendor of like, I can get it for here, but you're here. We've seen comparison shopping on the floor. It happens.
Yeah. And how important is customer service? It's so important. You're there, you're talking to that person, you've made that connection with that person, that company. You build that level of trust with them right off the bat. It's like, okay, even though your price might be a little higher than something online that I'm seeing here, that's probably at this, discountwarehouse.com or whatever, that level of customer service is gonna, that peace of mind is not worth saving $10 on something like that,
Absolutely. So Brad Bosse, we're going to wrap up that. So Glen Place, when are you there? What are the hours and how can they find you?
Glen Place, Goffstown, put in your GPS, 208 South Mass Street, Goffstown, New Hampshire. We're there every day from 11 to 4. It's either myself or my associate, Jeremy Duhamel. We're there every day from 11 to 4. Come check them out. We also have a project going on in Bedford called Huntington Ridge. It's a 9 single-family home subdivision.
Oh, wow.
We have 6 left. You can go on our website and pick out any of our 17 to 18 floor plans and pick out your lot, pick out all your interior upgrades. And then we'll have a lot more projects coming in the end of the year too. So,
and how do they get to you, real estate boss man?
You can get me on Facebook at Brad Bosse, or actually it's facebook.com/Brad Bosse Realtor. All my social media is at Real Estate Bosse. And I gave my number earlier, 603-801-1838. Email brad@mohomes.com, and I'm always available.
And Bosse's with an E.
Bosse is with an E,
to make it easy. So think of it that way. Bosse makes it easy, so go with the E's.
Boss with an E.
So, Brad Bosse, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
Podcast. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. We're going to have more, and you're going to learn something new every single time we do this. You're listening to Building New Hampshire, the podcast.
Dum, dum, dum.
Dum, dum, dum.